From EPAWA Weather Consulting, headquartered in Worth Whitehall, Pennsylvania, this is Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are those of the forecaster alone and may not reflect those of the staff of EPAWA Weather Consulting LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Now, without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Good Sunday morning to you. Another edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, December 22nd, a pre-Christmas edition of the Weather Weeklies video. We will have one again on the 29th. We're going to have normal operations for that. Just one programming note, though. This week, we're going to have the forecasts and daily video both Monday and Tuesday this week. We will not have either on Christmas Day or the day after. All right, we're going to be closed during that time frame. And actually, we're going to be closed from about noon on Christmas Eve onward. All right, so the next daily forecast that you will see, next video that you will see will come on Friday morning. All right, so that's our programming note for this week. And the reason we're able to do that is because we have a relatively benign pattern coming with no storms to track. And I know some of you are upset about that. You wanted a white Christmas. Historically, it's not really that common to see a Christmas Eve or Christmas Day snowfall. As a matter of fact, you have to go back to 2012 to see anything measurable on Christmas Eve, and it was minor, and then you have to go back to 2002 to see something on Christmas Day that was of significance, 6 inches or greater of snow, and that was 2002. So it's not a normal occurrence for this to happen. So I've been using the hashtag Hallmark Channel delusion this week a lot on Twitter, because it seems to be that it's not just Hallmark Channel, but they all like the Christmas movies, and they get all excited about snow and Christmas Eve snow and things like that. It's just not a normal occurrence, and they kind of lead you to believe that it should be. And so every year we deal with this. Oh, we're going to get are we going to get a white Christmas? It's always possible, but the odds are against it greatly for that to occur. So we're going to get back to the basics in this video. I'm going to actually start talking about things that I talked about in the very first couple of videos in November, for those of you who watched, and show why we are still on track with what we projected to be our number one analog for this winter. If you look at the way November went, we expected it to be colder than average. If we look at the way December has gone thus far and is expected to finish, we're almost at the end of the month, it's not hard to project that. It is also what we projected and what we expected. Okay, so let me say that one more time. December is going the way we expected as far as temperature anomalies and precipitation for that matter. Okay, and there's a reason we're able to do that and why we're able to project that far ahead and why we still think it's going to flip here in January. Okay, so let's go over to this is the long range outlook from Friday. It was somewhat abbreviated because we didn't have a lot of variance here, a lot of storms to deal with, so it was a little shorter than average than it normally is. Whether we don't have anything here to really talk about as far as storms until we get to the end of the month, and this is primarily or predominantly, if not all, a rain system, because it's coming at a time where temperatures are going to be milder than average. All right, and we expect, now that we've reached Sunday, where the slightly below average that was there before for the last couple of days is now being replaced through Christmas with slightly above to above average temperatures, with temperatures well into the 40s to near 50 on some of those days. After that, we still remain slightly above average straight through New Year's Eve. And then we have this transition period between the 1st and 4th of January. Now, it might come a little sooner in that period. It might come a little later in that period. We gave it a little bit of a buffer there where it's going to go from slightly above average to near average to slightly below. And then I think we are transitioning to slightly below as a general rule going forward into the month of January. Okay, and I'll show you why this is still on track here. Everybody's ready to give up on winter. And actually, when I posted the long range, it was only the 20th. It wasn't even winter yet. And I was getting the winter cancels already. It's like clockwork every year. It's hilarious. Hilarious that people want to cancel winter before it even starts. Just because it's warmer over Christmas means absolutely nothing. It is not a microcosm of what is to follow. Okay? Just relax a little bit. Here's December as a whole. Still, again, we had this projection here since the beginning of November, slightly above average for the month. That hasn't changed. Precipitation near slightly above average. That hasn't changed. Snowfall, we were thinking that might be closer to near average. In some places it is, and I'll show you that in a second. But for the most of you, it's especially in the southern half of our region, it is not near average at all. It's actually below. They're quite a bit below in some areas. But in January as a whole, we expect temperatures to turn slightly below average with near to slightly above average precipitation. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that that yields the chance for above average snowfall. What is average, you ask? Okay, well, here's what we have at these 6 climo stations, and this is what average December snow equals. The red here, or actually this column here just to the right, I just put this on there this morning to show you what the average snow is compared to the actual, what actually fell this month. And since I don't expect any snowfall for the remainder of this month, or largely none, this should be pretty close to what we are finishing at. Now, most areas, like Philadelphia, just over a trace of snow there, 0.1. Allentown, a little bit less than half of what is normal. Harrisburg, well under, another like Philadelphia-like total here at 0.2. Wilkes-Barre, though, you are actually very slightly above average for the month. Average is 7.4, you have 7.8. Okay, so you're the lone winner. You go up the north there, you had a little bit of snow on a couple different occasions. And here's Newark, just slightly below average, and Atlantic City was also below average. So it looks like the southern half didn't benefit as well as much as the northern half did here for December. But here is the average snowfall in January, and we are going region-wide above average for snowfall. So this is what your averages are for each location. So we're going to get more than this, we think, at each location for the month of January. Still holding that this morning. Here's the looking at the temperature periods going forward. We have an upper air ridge that's going to be in place pretty much through the end of the year. That's going to be over the mainly centered over the Great Lakes, upper Midwest region, Ohio Valley. So the warmest anomalies are going to be found there, but you're still going to have above average temperatures in most of the country. This is actually looking at Christmas Eve, so you're not getting any snow here anywhere. This is most parts of the country are going to be absent of white Christmas possibilities. Maybe a little bit in the upper Midwest up here. Maybe up here. Even though it's showing above average here is a lot colder than what we are. So this is a little misleading. But we might have a little touch of snow up there. But elsewhere, maybe in the Cascades, elsewhere we're looking at nothing. Okay, and this is pretty much the pattern through the end of the year. Now, we're looking at a couple days ago, changes in the longer range guidance. And this was looking at the GFS a couple days ago. Actually, it ran on the 18th. And it was showing a ridge expanding into the current void. Now, if you look at the current area there now, there's no ridge. Okay, there's a Gulf of Alaska low, so that is not conducive of colder weather coming in our region. But if you get a ridging expanding into Alaska, you can develop a negative EPO. The verdict's still out on that, exactly if that occurs or not, or maybe it just gets back down to neutral instead of positive. Either way, most modeling is now suggesting that we're going to have the polar vortex going to be sitting somewhere up here near Hudson Bay or maybe just north of it. And because of this ridge presence out here, it forces this cold air south. Okay, now this was a couple days ago was looking at. This is a look at this morning. And the Euro ensemble and GFS ensembles are almost the same thing with what it's showing here. Now it's indicating there is a cross-polar flow developing here as a result of that ridging out into the Gulf of Alaska. Cross-polar flow means you got basically Siberian cold coming across the poles and continuing to the eastern United States, and you got some cold air coming in here. And look at the time frame, January 3rd, January 4th. Isn't that where we had it? Okay, here's the extreme cold up here far north that's working its way down, and you get slightly below average temperatures in our region as this continues to slide down to the south. Now the question is, how long does this last? Is this just a transient shot or not? Well, a lot of it is predicated on the Madden-Julian oscillation, the projections of the Madden-Julian oscillation. Next couple days and through the end of the month, you're going to have this, the MJO wave going into phase 6. Phase 6 is a warm phase. Okay, and that's why you have this. Look at this look here. Almost the whole country warm. Let me go back a couple slides here, just to show you what that was. Yeah, that's a phase 6 look. Okay, so this what it's showing there is what's making sense. When it goes into phase 7 in January, you start getting colder here. You get this coldest up in the upper Midwest and Great Lakes, and slightly below in our region. If it does make it to phase 8, we are the coldest and stormiest phase that we'll see. Okay, so the projections are generally, for most modeling, going to phase 6 and then phase 7. After that, they all split on what happens after that. That's why you're seeing some different solutions to long range. This is the CFS taking it into phase 7 and maybe getting toward phase 8. I mean, we'll see. Okay, GFS actually takes this and loops it out of phase 6 into phase 7 and then back into phase 6. And the European guidance, European ensembles, takes it into phase 6 and goes to phase 7 and wants to crash it back into the circle of death, kind of like that. So there's a lot of different solutions to what it has in the Matt and Julian oscillation going forward. Whether this continues eastward or not remains to be seen, but we don't need a phase 8 necessarily. Phase 7 will do it in January, and you can see that here. Here's the January MJO phases of 7 and 8 and what it looks like. You get slightly below average temperatures here, okay? And it gets really cold if you get into phase 8. So we're uncertain if we get to phase 8 or not, but phase 7 will do it. Phase 7 will be suffice, okay? Now, when we looked at why we thought November, December, January, February, when we're doing the winter outlook and we're saying, well, what matches up to current year here? We're looking at 2013, 2014 as the number one analog. Here's how November 2013 worked out in our region. We had below average temperatures. That's what we had. And slightly above average temperatures in December of 2013. Yep, that's what we had. Okay, so this being our leading analog, we're saying ahead of time that maybe it would follow a 2013, 2014 winter, and 2014, or January 2014, if you take this a step further, was colder than average. All right, now here's why we're keeping to this projection for that year. This is, and this is going to be a little crunched here because I had to fit it. These are the sea surface temperature anomalies across the globe currently. These are observed right now, okay? All the reds are above average, any of the blues are below average sea surface temperatures compared to what is considered normal, okay? So if you look at December 2013 and look at what it is right now, that is nearly a spot-on match. Spot on. Warm blob, warm blob. Here you got this warm blob here. You got this cold here. Everything's matching up. Even the Atlantic is matching up perfectly. Okay, so this is very, very close. There is no reason for me to think that what happened in 2014 will not happen again and history repeats itself. That it's not going to be precisely the same, because it's just not. It's not going to be precisely the same. There's other factors that go into this as well, but as long as you have sea surface temperatures matching up almost identically like this, it's going to flip at some point. Okay, and here's what it did in 2013, 2014. Here's what January 2014 looked like. This is after a warm month, mind you. Look at the cold temperatures that we had here. Here's February. We actually had tremendous amounts of snow in February, actually January and February. We didn't have much snowfall in November and December of 2013, just like we didn't have much this year, except in a few places. But once we turned January and February, we had some pretty high snowfall amounts. This was an above average month. February was a well above average snowfall month. As a matter of fact, many locations here received a normal winter's worth of snowfall in the month of February alone. Okay, so we still have this in the pipeline. It's just it's not a matter of if, in my opinion, that it changes. It's a matter of when it changes. And I think right now we're going to transition the first week of January, just like we did in 2014, just like we did in 2013, the year prior. I'm sorry, the year after, 2000. Get this straight. January 2014, we had a flip in early January. January 2015, which is also one of our analogs. So it was a little lower down the chart, but it's still one of our analogs. It also flipped in early January, and we had the same thing we're dealing with this year with people complaining about lack of snow or cold or whatever. And it was actually a very warm Christmas in January 2015 with temperatures in the 50s and 60s across the region. Then we paid for it after that. We got some pretty good snow after that for the rest of the winter, and it just settled in. Okay. One of the things that was driving it that year was the Eastern Pacific Oscillation. So if you get that ridging into Alaska, you can get that cross-polar flow and deep cold coming into the upper Midwest, and eventually parts of that bleeds eastward. This is what drove the pattern in 2013, 2014. We had unfavorable MJO phases. We had very little blocking over Greenland. You don't have to have that if you have the Eastern Pacific Oscillation cooperating. Now, if you look at the longer range teleconnections this morning, they don't look like they really want to establish this too much. But, run before it did. So it keeps going back and forth, back and forth. I think you're eventually going to get to this pattern where you get into a cross-polar flow and you get that cold coming across from Siberia, across the poles, northern Canada, southern Canada, and then into the northern United States, and then eventually our region. I think that does happen eventually. It's just going to take a little bit because we're going to have this warmer period that, again, was expected, but we have this going through the end of December, and then we're going to have some transition periods. We're going to go transition during the first couple days of January, maybe even the first week of January. We go from slightly above to near average and slightly below. Now, one thing to remember here is we're now in the coldest. We're entering into the coldest, climatologically, the coldest period of the year. So you don't need below average temperatures in order to get snow. Near average will suffice. Okay, so we're going to get into that month of January where as long as you're near average, you're not above average. You're looking at primarily snow and or wintry precip. Okay, and it's all going to be track dependent. Now, this is a lot of people are saying about, well, all these storms are cutting, and they're going to cut. Or are they? How long are they going to continue to cut? Is this another repeat of these cutting storms? Maybe initially until this transition is complete, but once this settles in, you're not going to have storms cutting anymore. You still have an amped southern jet, and as we going back to that image there, it's the same thing. If you go back to, let me get back to that image here, right here. In this setup here, you have that cross-polar flow as advertised, a little bit of a negative EPO coming in here, but you still have an amped southern jet stream here, so you could still get some bigger storms to coincide with that cold air. It might take a little bit to get established, and the models aren't going to pick up on it when it's this far out. Okay, so anything they're showing in the longer range, just kind of ignore it right now until we get to that point and get a little bit closer in the medium range. And once we have this established, then we're in business. Okay, I don't think it's going to take too long, but you can enjoy your holidays in the meantime. Certainly we will, without any travel interruptions, without any issues of having to track storms and alert clients and things like that. So we're going to take the time off, enjoy the time with your families, have a great holiday. This is the summary here. We have a dry week ahead with milder conditions at times through near the end of the month. So this goes through the end of December. We are favoring a rain system to end the mild pattern at the end of this month, which is next weekend. So probably next Sunday in the Monday time frame, somewhere into there, we're going to have this rain system, maybe a couple actually to deal with it, to move through. We're going to have a cold front with it. Once the system passes, it gets colder. The winter forecast is still on track. We are still favoring that top analog, and I showed you why. The sea surface temperatures are almost spot on, which is pretty incredible. So that includes the lead analogs, and we expect January to turn colder and snowier. All right, so we're going to get back into this pattern again, just like we had on several other years. And everybody's, worried about, we're not getting any snow in December. December, like I showed you, isn't really a huge month for snow. And if you looked at the past several years, over the past decade at least, it looks like it's almost as if climate shifted a little bit. And in January, February, March is our snowy months. That's what we'd be getting it for the, for quite a while. And then, the early starts, you might have had a storm early. Like last year, we had a storm in November, middle of November. They can happen, but they're going to be with most frequency and most impact in January, February, and then also parts of March. So I think we're still on track going forward. Again, we're going to have another Weather Weeklies video on the 29th, a week from today. We're not stopping that normal schedule for that. We will be off on the from the second half of Christmas Eve through Thursday the 26th. And we're going to be back on Friday with normal public forecasts and videos. So just keep that in mind this week coming up. But otherwise, I will see you next week. This is another edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, December 22nd. Join us again next week, and I will have hopefully a better handle on that longer range pattern with that cold coming in the beginning of January. Take care.